Okay. Can I just get rid of that too, Chad? Or can I pull it back up, right? Okay. So we're going to talk about payroll entry and importing payroll today. To start with, I just want to, on a high level, talk about how payroll is typically done every week or every 2 weeks, every month, however often you do it. There are 4 main functions that need to be done on every payroll. Okay, we're going to talk about some of those individually. So we have, first of all, data collection. Okay, data collection can be things like accumulating and tallying hours, calculating commissions, and in QFloors, hopefully you're using our commission report to tally your commissions. If you have employee installers, you can certainly collect their gross pay amounts through job costing and the contract labor report, right? And then all of those methods can be used to come up with somebody's gross pay that you're going to report to and print a check either in QFloors or to a payroll service, okay? So that's all data collection, and every payroll, whether you use QFloors internal payroll or whether you use a payroll service, everyone has to do those every time, okay? So there's no difference in that part of the payroll process, whether it's internal or external, okay? The next part of every payroll is creating paychecks, okay? Then we do accounting. In the creating paychecks part, we go to this employee sub screen in QFloors, right? And for a payroll service, hopefully you're going to a sheet, or you're logging into that payroll services website and entering your payroll there, right? And then for accounting purposes, through the payroll service, we got to record that payroll in your accounting system in QFloors. So that will be a step that we show you, and there will be several options that we'll go through in the presentation today, so you can see the different available options there. And then the final part of it is filing government forms, reports, and paying taxes, okay? And in this final one here, this is one you'll have to do if you are doing payroll internally with QFloors, but if you're with a payroll service, you don't have to worry about this last requirement at all, okay? And so we'll look at how that is to be done. So first of all, we start with our data collection, which is, as I said before, the same with either system, either internal or external. Got to collect the data, you got to tally the data, however you do that to get gross pay numbers for each of your people. So we're going to go through kind of the differences between doing it internally in QFloors and using a payroll service, okay, so that everyone has is clear on what the differences are. So internally with QFloors, we create paychecks, right? And everyone knows that has worked in QFloors before. We create paychecks in QFloors in the employee subscreen, okay? And to create a paycheck here, you're going to click on an employee. It's going to come up with amounts over here. You can have rate and hours if you want, but it'll tally up to some sort of a regular pay amount, okay? And then down here, it will do your employee deductions for FICA, for Medicare, for federal withholding, etc. So one of the things that's important if you're going to do internal payroll with QFloors is you need to keep these things current. We have provided the fields here for you to put in the right percentages and the right limits for all of these different things, okay? That's the FICA, Medicare, percentages and limits, and then you've got your withholding stuff. The other thing you need to do if you're doing internal payroll is you need to calculate everybody's federal withholding. If they have a salary, that's the easiest part because you can just put in whatever their federal withholding is in the calculation that you make in the federal spreadsheet, and you can stick that amount in there, and that will do the withholding for you, okay, on each check. The problem is if that amount changes every time, you have to go to the federal website or whatever the chart that you look at, the employee, the employer chart for how much you withhold, and you need to put that amount in depending on what their gross pay is. Okay. The other thing you can, and state withholding, same thing, right? The other thing you can do with internal payroll is you can add items, extra deduction items for health insurance, for 401k, and I'm not going to do any of those, but you can see you can put in amounts, you can put in fixed amounts or percentage of gross, etc. That will take out a percentage of whatever that might be. The thing about each of these additional items that you put in there is you need to know whether or not that particular item is subject to federal taxes, federal income taxes, which is this box, FICA taxes, state taxes, and local taxes. And some of the items that you put in there, like 401ks and stuff, are subject to some of those taxes, but not others. So you do need to know what those things are if you're going to do internal payroll yourself. We don't provide any expertise in that. You either need to ask your accountant or know how to do it and what those rules apply to those different things yourself. Okay, so that's how you will put this in here, and then to create a check, you're just going to create bill down here at the bottom, and it will tell you that it's created a payroll check for that employee. Okay, and then you go to the next employee, same thing. Okay, so that's how you do creating paychecks in QFloors. All right, and then I think everyone knows where, if you've used QFloors at all, where to go to print a paycheck. If I look right down here, here's the paycheck I just created for Ryan Malone, and you come to the checkbook screen and print it out, okay? The quickest way to do this is to create all of your checks over here in QFloors first, and create them here, click on the next one, create that check, etc., and then go print all of your checks together, okay? So that's the process of creating the creating the paychecks and then printing the paychecks. And then of course you distribute those to the employees. Okay. All right. So after you've done a payroll or printed these paychecks, then you have the work of paying your FICA taxes. And with most of you, that's probably paying them after every pay period, however often you do that. So it might be every pay period you pay that. Some of you might be small enough you only do that once a month, but you're paying it at least once a month, the FICA taxes, okay? You also need to pay FUTA taxes once a quarter, SUTA taxes once a quarter usually for most states, state withholding once a quarter, and local taxes depending on where you live, okay? So you do that with every pay period or on a monthly, quarterly basis, however that goes. And then in addition to paying the taxes, you also have to file the forms, okay? You've got 941 forms, 940 forms, that's the federal unemployment. Then you've got state unemployment that's at least quarterly. And then yearly you do W-2s, and local, it's whatever you got going in your particular place, okay? So the way that you find those numbers for filing these reports and for paying these taxes, of course, in QFloors is under reports, employee pay subtotals, and if we look at let's just do the one that I did here. Okay, so there's the check I just created. If all of your employees were in there, they would all be listed here with totals in each of these columns so that you would know how much your gross pay is, how much you deducted for each of these, the FICA, the Medicare, and any other deductions, as well as the employer portion of each of those things, so that you know how to fill out your 941s. Okay. QFloors can also give you the 941 numbers to fill out on your 941 form if you need that too. Okay. So that's how you do an internal payroll. And you do that each time you have a payroll. Yes, question.
Somebody
asked a question.
They don't see the percentage numbers because they have the payroll table loaded, the old ones. So they're wondering why they can't see those percentages.
Okay, so there's a question about these percentages right here and why they don't see those. You have the old tables loaded. So if you go up to your help menu right here and go down to about QFloors, they would have to do what, Chad? To payroll version, some payroll version, and they need to uninstall that, or support department can help you with that part. Okay, if you don't have those. Yeah, right. Okay, good. So call our support if you're not seeing those percentages, but it has to do with the version of the payroll that you have. Okay. All right. So let's now switch over to what it takes to do payroll through a payroll service. So first, there's some setup time. It's similar to the setup that you have in QFloors, where you put in people's W-4 information and married, not married, single, that kind of stuff. What extra deductions they want, etc. You do all of that same type of setup that you're doing manually in QFloors. You do that same stuff in with a payroll service. Okay, and so there's a one-time setup for all of your employees. Once you get all of that in there, it's a pretty slick process, because you should just go to their website and they will have a data entry form for you to fill in the blanks. Really, it's kind of, most of them that I've seen are kind of like a spreadsheet where you fill in total number of hours if you're paying someone hourly. If they're a salary person, the salary's already there because that was set up. If they're hourly, by the way, their hourly rate is already there, so you don't have to worry about that. You're just putting a number of hours, or maybe a commission amount for salespeople. You're typing that number in that you're going to pay them that particular time, or bonuses or things like that. Okay, and I'll show you an example of one of those screens here in just a minute. But that's what you do. You just do that all the way down through this sheet for each of your employees, and it will create all of the deductions and so forth for you. And at the end of the process, you just hit process payroll or go, or whatever their button may be, depending on the payroll service. Okay, and once you've done that, that's it. That's all you have to do. Okay, and the payroll service creates all the checks, does all the deductions, creates all the checks, pays all the taxes, files all the forms for you. Okay, so all of this stuff that's over here in this part of the thing, you don't ever have to worry about. Okay, the only thing you have to do after you process payroll through a payroll service is enter the payroll bill into QFloors to record the expenses associated with that payroll. Okay, so here it's kind of a two-step process. You process the payroll and then you enter the bill, and the rest of this stuff you don't have to worry about. Okay, all right, so sorry, let's go back here. So here's an example of what it might look like in a website. This is a payroll service website, and what it might look like, right? You've right here, they have 3 employees, but you can open this up to see as many as you want. It'll scroll down if you have more than 3, but you can see here where this employee's already been set up with an hourly wage, a yearly wage, an annual salary, and you just put in, you know, any additional earnings, maybe a commission, overtime can be added, etc., to give you whatever the gross pay is for that particular pay period. Okay. And you do that same thing. Here's an employee that's an hourly employee set up on this particular website, $22 an hour. They have all of the same options over here. Another hourly person. Okay. So you just go in, fill in number of hours for, you know, your hourly people, and any bonuses or commissions for anybody. You save and continue, and it will go to, you know, personal time off things, review, and then confirm. So you go through those steps, pay it. It does your payroll for you, does all the calculations like we just talked about. Okay. So that's kind of an example of what a payroll service screen might look like, and how it might, you know, how it is to work with it. Shouldn't, you know, with a number of employees of, you know, 5 to 10 employees in a particular company, that part of it, after you've done the data collection, okay, the data collection is really the long part or the hard part, if you will, of payroll. But then if once you've done the data collection, you just put in those numbers into those fields and hit process, and you don't have to worry about payroll anymore. Okay. It does, and hopefully you set up with your payroll service that they do direct deposits into your employees' accounts. Okay. That's certainly much easier, and it is cheaper if you do direct deposit with pretty much every payroll service. Okay. So let's talk about now that last part, which is how do we get these payroll bills from a payroll service into, oh, yeah, let's take questions. Do we have questions, Chad? Can we still do a direct deposit using QFloors payroll? No, direct deposits into employees' accounts is not an option in QFloors. Okay. Any other questions about that? Okay. All right. So here are the steps to import a payroll bill. Okay. So I'm going to talk about 3 different ways in which you get a payroll bill from a payroll service into QFloors. Okay. We're going to go through each of those steps and how that happens one by one. Okay. So you can see the different options you have. So option number 1 is you can import a payroll bill into QFloors. Now, this option is only going to work for those payroll services that can create an IIF file type for you. Okay. Many of them do create these types of files. The IIF file is a QuickBooks formatted file type, okay, which we've made QFloors available to work with. All right. Okay, so we can import, when we import an IIF file, we import it into the QFloors bills screen. Okay. IIF files are the type of files that QuickBooks uses, and so it's a pretty common file used in many accounting places. Okay, so it has to be an IIF file. Proper setups need to be done in your payroll service. Okay, things like matching the names of your account in QFloors with the name of the account in your payroll service setup. Okay. There's a knowledge base article in QFloors, and so I want to kind of flip over to that real quick to show you what that's looking like right now. I don't know if any of you noticed, but we have a new support website. So when you go to your login now, this is what our support website looks like. You can go to knowledge base right here, and you have these options over here. I'm going to show you we're going to go down to CSV imports. And in here, we're going to look at this option right here under CSV imports called Patriot Payroll Import IIF. Okay. So this particular knowledge base article is specific to a payroll service named Patriot, okay, that we've aligned with. It doesn't have to be Patriot. You can produce these files from other payroll services also. You just have to know how to do the setups properly and then export the file. But we have a detailed list of here of how you use Patriot and their reports that they provide for you and their setups inside of their software, so that when you export the Patriot file out, it comes out into the right format with the right entries in the right fields. And then you export that file, you save it to a place on your computer, and then you can turn around and import that file into QFloors, just like other CSV imports. So we're gonna do that together so you can kind of see how that works. Okay. First of all, I've already saved this file here into this spot on my computer, and I want to go back here real quick to read the knowledge base, export from the payroll, import by hitting the import payroll button. Okay, so we're gonna look at that together. So if we go back here to QFloors, the payroll import button is right here, import payroll. And so if you hit that, is that the one, Chad? It probably is. So it's in that folder. Yeah. So you're going to find the file that where you exported your file to, and you click on it right there, and then you hit open. Okay, welcome to the QFloors payroll import feature. Do you wish to continue importing payroll? Yes, your payroll has been added to QFloors bills. Okay. So when we come to the bill screen here, this bill that's waiting for us right here is the bill that we just imported from Patriot, okay, the IIF file. And so that's pretty much it. It imports this for you. It also schedules a payment for you in a lump sum, and then you can go ahead and create the checks over there, or the check in the checkbook window. Okay. I'm going to talk about this again later, but I would recommend if you use a payroll service, try to get them to do lump sum deductions rather than individual deductions. It just makes the process easier as you do each payroll. It'll cut down on time. Okay. All right. So that's what it takes. So after you've done the import there, that's it. That's all you have to do, and create the check, obviously, right? You got to come over here, do that right there. Click on, let's see, it was this one here. It's going to be a non-check item because you're not printing a check, and you just hit save. Okay. So that's what it takes to import a payroll and then pay that payroll, right? Just do the step of paying it. Okay. So that's the process of importing a payroll bill from a company like Patriot or any IIF file that any other company can create. Okay. And we've got detailed instructions on how to do all of that and make sure that you've got the right setups done, again, in the knowledge base that we just talked about. Okay. There we go. Okay, the second way that you can get payroll information into QFloors is through importing a journal entry. Okay. Now, importing a journal entry can be used for many other things also. It doesn't have to be just used for payroll, but this is the most common way that people use it. Okay, so you can import a journal entry. So I would only recommend doing this method if you're large, you have multiple locations, and or you have multiple profit centers. Okay, you want to do this when you have dozens and dozens or maybe hundreds of line items to split out your payroll into, right? Different departments, different locations, etc. And and we have customers that are importing payroll journal entries like this with 200 line items. Yeah, so there are large operations that do this and that need this capability, okay, and it makes it a lot faster for them to do a journal entry rather than the alternatives. So we've got a knowledge base article on that in QFloors, same place, qfloors.com, and make sure your payroll service can export a CSV file that has the components of this file. So if you go to the QFloors.com, if you go to the support site and look at that knowledge base article, it'll tell you the different fields that you need to have there, that your payroll service needs to provide in a report format so that you can then import it. Okay, so that's importing a journal entry. All right, so this is the third way that you can get a payroll into QFloors, and it's just by entering a payroll bill manually into QFloors. Okay, so I recommend doing it this way actually, as opposed to even the import. If you have, not that many lines, okay, so you don't have dozens and dozens of lines to enter in. If you have more than 50, you should probably do the journal entry, okay, because it'll be take less time. Okay, but if you have a reasonable amount of lines, and I would say that 90%, 95% of our customers don't have a payroll that's any more than 10 line items. That's most of the people, right? Most of our customers. So if you're in that situation and you're using a payroll service, I recommend that you do things this way. Okay. All right. One caution for you. Please don't get frustrated, because the first one that you do, the first payroll bill that you put in this way, can be difficult. Okay. You need to know how to read the payroll reports that the payroll services give you so that you can pick the right numbers out of those reports and put them in the right places on the payroll bill and QFloors. Okay. I've done a lot of those. I can help you with that. Ron can help you with that. Many of our support staff can help you with those too. So please just call us on the first one that you do. Okay. If you're not used to doing it, you haven't done it before, just give us a call. We can help you with the first one. It should only take, it should only take one time, because after you do the first one, we're just going to use the duplicate feature to create all of the subsequent bills. Okay, so let me show you what I've done here in QFloors just to give you an idea. I've put in a payroll bill here that is typical of a payroll that you guys might have. I've got a line item for the gross wages for each of these different categories. Okay, if you want to separate your payroll into the different categories like wages office, wages owner salaries, commissions, you can separate them in these different lines. Okay, and if you put all of your payroll into one, you'll only need one line item. Okay, just depends on how you want to split that up. All right. So the first three lines here in this example are gross pay lines. Okay. Then next I have the payroll tax expenses, and you'll notice that that's only the employer's portion of the expense. Okay. And not all of the others. That's why you might need help on the first one, because we need to show you where to find that on your payroll reports. Okay, so you only put in the employer's portion of it. Okay, the next line I have here is professional fees for the payroll service, right? So this is what the payroll service is going to charge you, is $75 or whatever it is for that fee. Okay, and some payroll services charge you each payroll, and some of them do it monthly. Okay, just depends on where you're at. All right, and then I've got another line item here for insurance deduction, health insurance deduction. Okay, and that's going to be put in as a negative. But after you've done all of these things, what you're left with is a total bill for the amount that of money that will be coming out of your checkbook. okay? Because prior you've given the payroll service the ability to deduct funds from your checking account. Once you process a payroll, they have the ability to just deduct those from your account. And so this is how a typical payroll bill would be entered manually into the system, okay? And just a note here about the payments, okay? I've got this one set up so that the lump sum, the whole amount is just being deducted in one large lump sum, okay? If you have paper checks for, let's say, 2 of your employees require you to give them paper, you can simply put in their net checks here for those paper checks like this. Let's just say, you know, Ken has a check and his check is 1536, okay? And we're going to save that. And then we also have one for Angela, whose is 1632.25, okay? And so that's her net check. And so, whoops, I went over the top, sorry. You got to hit new whenever you create a new payment. Let's do Ken again. And that's be 15. Okay. So now we have 2 separate checks that you can now create separate checks for in your checkbook window. And then you're going to have this balance of whatever it is that's going to be taken out all at once, which is the balance is 16,147. So I'm going to do new there, do 16,147.22 for the balance. Okay, so that will encompass all of the direct deposits that you have set up for all of your other employees, all of your taxes, and all of your fees, okay, all together in one. And I'm going to talk about, you know, your payroll service companies doing things that way instead of the other way. Okay, so are there any questions so far after that? Yes, question by Chad.
You only have to split those out if those checks are coming out of your account.
Yes, for paper checks.
But
the
payroll service is going to create paper checks too.
So it's a good point. Sometimes your payroll service will create paper checks on their account. And if they do that, you don't have to split out paper checks because they're not going to come out of your account as separate transactions. Okay. Some payroll services require or have you print those paper checks internally, and then you distribute those checks. You have to print them and distribute them. Okay. So that's one of the points I'm going to make now on this next part of the presentation here is you know, some of the things that you should do and require of a payroll service. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about what the payroll service requirements that you should require of a payroll service in order to get the best service and the best experience with the payroll service. These are some of the things that you should require of a payroll service, okay? They must have an online website type data entry, not a phone, okay? And a simple way to enter your payroll numbers. That's number one. So if they don't have an online or website that you fill stuff in, just disregard them. You don't need that kind. There's plenty out there that have it, okay? Number two, they must do full service payroll, okay? And a lot of payroll services now also do a bunch of HR things for you, you know? And so you might want to look at some of those things because some of those things they provide for free. Some HR features they charge you a premium for. They charge you a little more than just regular payroll, but in a lot of cases, if you don't have an internal HR person, sometimes that stuff is worth it, okay? Number three, they must assume, meaning the payroll service, must assume liability for all the reports and the communication with the government entities. Okay. When I was doing my own payroll, I used to get a couple times a year, I would get a letter from the government. Hey, this report didn't match some number, 2 quarters ago. You owe us such and such. And most of the time when I got those, it wasn't my mistake, it was the government's mistake. And the point is, with payroll service, you never even have to look at those letters or answer those letters. They all go straight to your payroll service and you never have to even deal with them. Okay. Even when you're right, it still requires your time and effort to prove to the government that you're right. Okay. And so there's a lot of time involved with that. All right. Number 4, employee logins to access check stubs and W-2s. So they need to make it so that the payroll service needs to have separate employee logins so your employees can go get their check information without bugging you. Okay. Even though you'll also have access to it through your own login, make your payroll service provide check stubs and W-2 information for your employees that they can go grab themselves so it doesn't waste your time. Okay. All right. Number 5, direct deposits are preferred and less expensive. Okay. I know that there are some of you out there that have employees that want to get paper checks still. Okay. And so if you have any employees like that, you need to fire them. No, I'm just kidding. You don't need to fire them, but direct deposits are much better. Okay. Much easier for you, and they're less expensive for you. Okay. And you don't have to deal with paper. All right. Most people today are getting their paychecks direct deposited into their accounts. Okay, it's just the way things are nowadays. Try to get a payroll service to take lump sum deductions from your bank account. Okay, and in the cases where they do direct deposits, you'll be able to get lump sums pretty much all of the time. Some payroll services separate your direct deposits to your employees' accounts from your taxes, from your fees. You might have 3 or 4 different deductions from a payroll on one payroll that you have to schedule 3 or 4 different payments on your payroll bill to record those as separate transactions on your bank so that you can do your bank reconciliations. Okay, so try to get as much as possible a lump sum deduction from your bank. And then number 7, and maybe most important, well, no, I shouldn't say most important because these features up here are most important, but one of the things that should coach you and teach you about which payroll service to use, and there are a lot of them out there right now, which one you should use is based upon what they're going to charge you. Okay. Just so everyone's aware, payroll services nowadays, you can get them, we've seen them as low as $50 per month for someone that has 5 employees. Okay, if you have 5 W-2 employees, it costs you about $50 a month. Okay, if you have 10 employees, it's about $70 a month. Okay, these are the types of numbers that you should be expecting to pay for a payroll service. If you're not on payroll service yet, if you're still doing internal, think about that. Those of you that are on payroll services, if you're paying a lot more than that, you might want to look around, because there's companies that do all of these features really well, really slick, really easy, and it's really cheap. Okay, so if you are leery of using a payroll service because you have always done it in-house, right, or you have had a bad experience 10 or 15 years ago, you need to try it for the first time, or you need to try it again. Okay, you really do. There's too much that has gone on in the last 15 years in the payroll industry. Okay, technology and competition have forced bad companies out, bad payroll service companies out, and you have numerous options that you can look at. Lots of competition in payroll services. So I recommend you find a local or regional payroll service provider if you can, and one that meets all of these criteria that we just talked about. Okay. If you don't want to research and find the best one in your area, you can there are good national companies out there that you can just go get it from. Okay. The one that we work with is Patriot. It's a good national company, very cheap. The prices I've quoted you are Patriot prices. So you may want to look into that one if you don't want to do the research for a local or regional one. Okay. I would recommend you don't use large national companies like ADP or Paychex. You're going to pay more for those. Not that they do a good job. They have all the features that we just talked about here. They're just quite a bit more expensive, okay, than some of the others out there. Those are the big names, and so because they're big, they think they can charge more, but you don't need to pay more, okay? All right, so you need to ask yourself, if you're paying someone to create paychecks and pay all the different taxes and file all of the different reports that we've talked about and keep all of the deadlines and assume all of the responsibility and liability for all of that you do, is it worth $600 a year to you to do that? Okay. It's, in my opinion, it's not worth that. And so please look into doing a payroll service, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. We've had many people that have fought us on this, and they've eventually tried it and have been very happy with it. Okay. And can't believe that they put it off as long as they did. So that is the end of my thing. Okay. Oh, I should have said that at the very beginning. Yeah, so what we went over here was only W-2 employees. So if for 1099 purposes, you're still going to use QFloors for all 1099s. Okay, you're going to produce your contract labor reports right here, right? To get your labor reports. I don't know if we have any. Okay, so you're going to produce your contract labor reports here, get the total amounts for your installers each week or each pay period, and then you're going to create those paychecks over here. When I say paychecks, I mean a 1099 subcontractor payment. Okay, and you're going to stick these in here, create bill, and then go print your checks. Okay, so 1099s, you're going to still create these in here, and there will be no deductions, right, for these types of things. You can see there's no tax deductions. You're just paying them what they want. Okay, maybe since we do have a little bit of time, just as a side note, since people are wondering about 1099s, if you need to add deductions to your installer's paycheck, let's say that they you sell them supplies, or they bought supplies from you and you need to deduct those supplies from them, or you might have a retainage from them, you can add that type of thing right here. Okay, you just hit add, it'll put it in there. We're going to do this as a % of gross, and I'm going to make that 10%. And let's see, I'm just going to throw it in here for our purposes today. And so now you've added a retainage amount that every time you put in an amount here, it will deduct 10% for you off of that check. And now you've got a net check of 540. Okay. And anytime you come in and do a new amount for the next pay period, it'll deduct that same 10%. Okay. So that's how you do retainage for installers. All right, other questions? That's it. You have any questions, Chad? No. Chad just wanted to say, don't use QFloors for payroll. Use a payroll service, please. You'll be much happier. Okay. Oh, one thing I should say, remember on the payroll that we entered manually, this is the one that I did manually. Once you've done the first one, remember how I said don't do the first one by yourself. We'll help you with it. Once we do, when you do your second payroll and third payroll, you're going to find your original payroll. Just do duplicate, hit new, right? And you're going to hit your location, and now you'll change your date here. This is now, my 6/25 payroll date. You can change your numbers here through 6/20 or whatever it might be. Okay, and now you can come down and just change your amounts in here. So you're just going to go to, let's say it was 3,200 this time. The officer's salary was the same. Commissions always change, so they're going to go down to this right here, and then your payroll taxes obviously will change. Okay, and so forth. Okay, insurance should stay the same. So you just change the numbers that you need to on here. The rest stays the same. You just hit save, and now you've got your second payroll done. Okay, now in order to do that quickly, you need to be able to read your payroll bill, your payroll report from the payroll service. Really, and we can teach you how to do that. Okay, and show you how to do it. It's not too difficult once you know what to look for, and then from there on, once you get the hang, you can highlight on your paper what numbers to use and where to put them. From then on, you should be able to just use a previous payroll bill, duplicate it, and hit new and go forward. Okay, that's how you do it. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we appreciate you. Oh yeah, we have recorded this, and we will be posting this online at the website so that you can take a look at it there if you want to review, and other people that weren't able to see it can see it there. All right, thank you.